Let's keep it going. Next part. I think I might go back to just doing, like, longer parts for the rest of this game. Just because cutting these into individual parts by To Be Continued has created such a backlog of uploads now that, like, I'm like, way further ahead than I need to be. April 2nd, 2:33 p.m. Zodiac, Fountain Room. Bubba Bear. Fountain Room. I would stumble over that. Test results have just come in, sir. Traces of ubiquium were found in the teapot. They were? Just like Mr. Edgeworth said. Curse you. You better not think this means you beat me. You really need to drop this obsession with coming in first, Mr. Winner. We're all on the same side here, remember? We're all trying to get to the truth. What? But first is best. Everybody knows it's better to be a winner than a loser. That's really no way for a prosecutor to think. Not a successful one, anyway. But I... Enough. Mr. Edgeworth, please refrain from taunting the boy. Why were you so mean to him? He was just a boy. Shouldn't have done that to him. This case has the most segments at 9. Yeah, because like half of them were like 30 minutes long. What a baby. Ignore him, Eustace. He isn't worthy of your attention. But Gavel, oh, alright. Why don't I take care of things here for now? In the meantime, you could perform a far more important task of going and checking on the victim. Oh, yeah, good idea. I'll be back. I'll be right back, sorry. Excellent, we shall see you shortly then. Mr. Winner's annoying, but totally harmless. Judge Gavel, on the other hand. Now, Miss Bound, perhaps you could explain why traces of ubiquium were found in your teapot. I had no idea there was anything like that in there. Perhaps it's one of the ingredients in the dishwashing soap I use? So you're telling the court that you did not intentionally put ubiquium in the teapot? Yes, exactly. Why would I? Until today, I had no idea that it could even be used to make poison gas. Objection! You're a trained actress, are you not, Miss Bound? And I thought you'd be a more convincing liar. What do you mean? You have access to the ultimate cookbook, correct? Book that just happens to contain the instructions on how to create the poison gas used in the attack. Meaning it's perfectly possible for you to know exactly how to make it. You're very well informed, Mr. Edgeworth. Miss Bound, is what Mr. Edgeworth said true? The book does contain information on how to make the poison gas, yes. But the fact is that I've seen it does not make me guilty. Ooh. Can I ask exactly how the gas was triggered? The victim used a blowtorch to heat the lid of one of the display cases, thereby melting the ubiquium. I see. But he locked himself in the room too, didn't he? Surely that and the fact that he had triggered it himself wouldn't it point to it being a suicide attempt? So she's not willing to admit anything. There's 11 segments left in this game total, if you want to split it up into that many parts or not. I don't know, we'll have to see. Because that's what I was doing from the beginning of this game, but at the same time, I have so many VODs of this game uploaded now on the YouTube channel that, like, I could probably just do it normally from this point on and not, and still not fall behind on uploads. Furthermore, where did I have gotten hold of the Infesticide Ultra? Oh, I don't know, perhaps you stole it. You know, I did bump into Moody Judy a week or so ago. And that very evening, I noticed my Infesticide Ultra had gone missing. Judy, surely you didn't. Delicia, you carry your bag of pharmaceuticals with you everywhere, don't you? There would have been any number of opportunities for someone other than myself to steal it from you. That's true, and I don't have any hard evidence that it was definitely Miss Bound who stole it. Judes, there's clearly something you're not telling us. Why don't you just come clean, We all know you never hurt somebody for no reason, so... Not you too. You think I'm guilty as well, Mr. Fender? Can you blame me? Got one wing disguised as another, a gas trap in one of the display cases. And you're the proprietor of the establishment. It's looking a lot like you did it, kiddo. Got this all wrong. You have to remember, the gallery doesn't have any security cameras, nor any security personnel. If some ill-intentioned person or other wanted to get in undetected, I don't think they'd have much of a problem. Wow, you're practically asking to be burglarized. You need to be more careful. Great Thief could have a field day in here. And I don't think she's joking. And actually, it seems that Mr. Gusto did in fact enter the gallery before it opened. Sheesh. Judy's one tough cookie. She's not budging an inch. Maybe it's time to rock a little technique Gregory taught me back in the day. And what technique might that be? So hear me out. Everything's connected to what happened 18 years back, yeah? And since we're not getting anywhere by focusing only on the here and now, maybe we ought to approach this from a different angle and look to the past for clues instead. A turnabout in thinking. So my father used this method as well. Alright, let's run through this with the old Thinkatron. How was Jude's involved in what happened back then? According to Miss Bound, it was because of her that the Mr. Frost's ice sculptures melted. And yet his sculptures are here on display at this very gallery today. Is it possible that she... Thank you, Fender. I think I know what I need to ask Miss Bound now. Don't thank me. Thank your pops. Now take it away, Milesy. I'll grab the popcorn. Miss Bound, you say that you were the one who caused Mr. Frost's creations to melt 18 years ago, correct? I'm afraid so. I was young and foolish, and it was a terrible accident. And yet what you did allowed you to open this exhibit, no? What do you mean? Yes, what do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth? If you're going to ask such questions, perhaps a formal testimony from Miss Bound might be best? Yes, perhaps it might be. I'd like to know a little more about the Zodiac Hall. And about why Miss Bound decided to dedicate this space to Mr. Frost's works. Very well, if you believe it to be relevant to the case, I will allow it. Miss Bound, would you mind? Not at all. I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I'm innocent. Then please, if you could give us some background on Zodiac Hall, and the pieces on display here. Zodiac Hall. It took 18 years, but at long last I was finally able to buy Samson's home back a little while ago. But a place like this is expensive to maintain, so I decided to turn it into an art gallery. To that end, I collected as many Paul Halik pieces as I could from around the world. Because, if I'm honest, it's always been something of a dream of mine to open a space dedicated to his work. Sorry, I'm trying to untangle my headphones here, and it's not working out too well. There we go. As good as it's going to get. Thank you for your testimony, Miss Bound. How wonderful it is that you were able to fulfill your dream. Well, Mr. Edgeworth, everything seems entirely above board to me. Judge Gavelle, that was simply the witness's preliminary statement. As you surely know, the value of that testimony cannot be evaluated without due cross-examination. Spoken like a true attorney. Very well. You may do what you must. It took 18 years, but at long last I was finally able to buy Samson's home back alive. I'm gonna press everything until I figure it out. 18 years. You must have gone a lot to buy it back, Miss Bound. Oof. This home, this place, such memories abound. I couldn't stand to lose what I had found. Samson, I did what I had to do. To see that home was here waiting for you. How does she make it look so easy? I'll say, but I wouldn't expect any less from a trained triple threat performer. You can continue with your testimony, Miss Bound, minus the singing, if you please.
Hold it!
You managed the gallery by yourself, Miss Bound. Yes, well, we only opened today, so I haven't done any much actual managing yet, but I have to keep the mansion going. Can't have it falling down around my ears. Samson could come home any day, after all. So she really got the house back from him. For him. I'm sorry, Judy. Wish I could have done more. Oh, you've done plenty, Mr. Fender. If anyone should have done more, it's me. Even if the only thing I could do right now is keep this place safe for Samson. Still? Well, the headphones are like permanently tangled now. They're just not going back to normal anymore.
Hold it!
They've, like, the plastic around, the rubber around the wires is, like, permanently warped at this point, I think. There's nothing I could really do about it. Paul Halik, that was Mr. Frost's pseudonym, correct? Yes, he adopted it while he was working on a sculpture in France. I see. I'm curious about some of the pieces in your collection. More specifically, how you were able to acquire the Taurus and Gemini sculptures. It was my understanding that Mr. Frost died before he could complete them. Yes, I was able to create replicas for the Winter Wing based on the photos of the sculptures he made. Really? Perhaps you could go into some more detail on that.
Hold it!
Tell me more about this dream of yours, Miss Bound. Oh, what I really wanted was to open a gallery with Samson, of course. gallery of dance, a gallery of song, a gallery of gaiety and candy all day long. That was the idea, anyway. Here I thought art was to be appreciated in silence, not accompanied by musical numbers. Alas, Mr. Tangaroa transgressed against the edicts of the Goddess of Justice. And as such, the part of your dream may go permanently unfulfilled. No! Samson he's innocent! That awful prosecutor refused to listen, but it's true. He'd never hurt anybody. Mr. Tangaroa gave a false confession in order to protect Miss Bound. Two of them really did what they could to protect one another, didn't they? He was able to create replicas for the Winter Wing based on the photos of the sculptures he made.
Hold it!
These photos you mentioned, you mean the ones you yourself took in Mr. Frost's room 18 years ago? Yes, you certainly know a lot about what happened back then, Mr. Edgeworth. So those statues in the Winter Wing are just copies? I didn't even get to see them before they melted. No, the sculptures in question were definitely not replicas. Which means that Miss Bound is lying. Because the salt was detected in them, right? That's his reasoning behind that. I know, it's such an awful shame, and after we went to the trouble to recreate them, too. Sculptures in the Winter Wing weren't replicas, they're the very ones from 18 years ago. Need to show her I'm aware of that, or I'll never get to the truth.
Objection!
Yeah, because the salt and the blood wouldn't be in it if they weren't the real ones. I'm afraid you've run out of road, Miss Bound. You can lie all you like, but you can't deny the results of the tests conducted on the sculpture's remains. And those tests leave no room for ambiguity. What you had on display weren't replicas. They were the very statues Mr. Frost carved 18 years ago. Oh, I could probably help explain how they worked it out if you'd like, dear. It's the sugar, you see. You think sugar, but the composition is actually quite unique. You could probably recreate the statues, but the sweet secret of their chemical makeup? No chance. Thank you, Miss Scone. I don't recall asking for her help, but still. To put it simply, the statues didn't disappear back then because they'd melted. They disappeared because you spirited them away and kept them hidden for those 18 long years. What? You kept a pair of flavored ice sculptures around somewhere for all that time? Not the most out there theory in the world, assuming you had a big enough icebox.
Overruled.
Quiet, all of you. Miss Bound, have you anything to say in your defense? So you've already learned that much. Should I take that to mean you admit to having hidden the flavored ice sculptures in question? No, I admit to no such thing. You haven't proven that I was the one who took those statues away. And you won't, because it would have been impossible for me to do so in the first place. The police were already here when they disappeared. How could I have done it without them noticing? How indeed. I don't know exactly how you did it yet, but I'm far from ready to say it was impossible for you to have stolen them away. You're a very persistent man, aren't you, Mr. Edgeworth? I am indeed, and I won't stop until I get to the truth. I see. Then I better tell you exactly what I did that day 18 years ago. 13 years ago. What? What I did that day. The whole time before judging began, I was waiting upstairs in our living area on standby. During the judging, I had to go change the camera's film cartridge for Samson. But before I could take the camera back to Samson, I discovered Mr. Frost's body. Later, around when your father arrived, I began to make the rounds and serve tea to everybody present. That was when I saw Mr. Gusto entering Mr. Frost's room. And those were my movements on the day it all happened. I hardly see how you could take issue with any of that. That's for us to decide, Miss Bound. You saying there's a contradiction in her story, Mr. Edgeworth? I'm more focused on proving that she did in fact steal those statues. The question is, when would she have had the opportunity to do so? If I could pinpoint that, I might be able to prove what exactly she got up to.
Hold it!
And what were you doing there while you were waiting? I was in my room practicing some dance routines. I was on a TV show called Bacon Bop with Samson, you see. Bacon Bop? What kind of show was it? It was a children's show. The two of them would sing and dance as they made a variety of sweets. Oh, that sounds awesome! Oh, the phone. Miles, you used to watch it? My father introduced me to it. I may have watched an episode or two. So Miss Bound passed the time before judging began by practicing her dance routines. Was this moment when Miss Was this the moment when Miss Bound stole the statues? No. That can't have been the moment she did it. I better listen carefully to what she says. Oh, man. It's gonna be a gimmicky thing, huh?
Hold it!
Were you the only one who was able to move around freely during the judging? Well, I wouldn't say freely exactly, but I was able to move around more easily than the contestants, yes. Even so, I could hardly have spirited away the sculptures around while Samson was standing right there, could I? And I ran straight off to change the film as soon as he asked me. I wouldn't have had time. So changing the film and the camera was as requested by Mr. Tangaroa. Was this the moment when Miss Bound stole the sculptures?
Hold it!
You went to the room containing Mr. Tangaroa's work before bringing the camera back to him, correct? Yes, I heard the sound of something collapsing. How many times have we seen this scene? The sound of a chocolate chip falling over after a certain someone took a bite out of one of the supports. And Mr. Tangaroa was still in Mr. Gusto's room when you found the body. Yes, I'm fairly certain that was the case. He was judging each room in order, and he liked to take his time. So the point at which he discovered Mr. Frost's body, was this the moment when Miss Bound stole the sculptures? You know, when your father and I began to make the rounds to serve tea to everybody present.
Hold it!
Just as you did today. Yes, I went around and offered everybody working on investigation a cup of tea. Present company included. I remember it well. You were here, there, upstairs, downstairs, everywhere in that little cart of yours. Interesting. And did anything strike you as strange around that time? Oh yeah, Gregory was singing the praises of Judy's tea, and I think he mentioned that the saucer was cold. His saucer was cold. This was the moment, because she had the statues under the thing. She didn't... At the time, she said she cooled down the saucers for one of the clients there, or for one of the people there, so that the tea wouldn't be too hot. But that wasn't the case. It was cold because the saucers were on top of this table that had the ice sculptures in it. Or a ice sculpture, at least. Miss Bound, I believe this is when you stole the sculptures. Hate to contradict you, but the fountain room was full of witnesses at that point, Mr. Fender included. Are you suggesting that I somehow got the sculpture out of Mr. Frost's room right under everyone's noses? That is precisely what I'm suggesting. Miss Bound stole those ice sculptures, and she did it by hiding them here.
Take that!
My father and Fender had no idea that one of the sculptures was mere inches away from them. Because it wasn't just a tea set you were pushing around, Miss Bound, but a hidden ice sculpture in a glass case. Ah!
Overruled!
Surely such a thing would have been impossible. How would a case of that size fit in the serving cart? It would have been spotted immediately.
Objection!
Who said anything about a serving cart? What? I'm not sure I follow, Mr. Edgeworth. What are you suggesting she used instead? Suggesting that Miss Bound used this to transport the statues.
Take that!
And this is... the cart that Miss Bound used to move the flavored ice sculptures out of Mr. Frost's room 18 years ago. And it would appear that the very same cart is still here with us in this fountain room. We originally bought that for use in the contest. And you're saying that Miss Bound loaded Mr. Frost's sculptures onto this cart and carried them off? I am. As you can imagine, all one would need to do is lay a case on its side, add a tablecloth, and it look exactly like a normal serving cart, thus allowing her to move the sculptures around freely. Can it be? Holy moly, of course! That's why those saucers were so chilly. They were sitting right on top of a big block of ice. Judes, how could you? Impressive. Then again, you are Mr. Gregory Edgeworth's son. Should have expected no less. There isn't a scrap of evidence that I stole those sculptures all those years ago. And yet I knew that no matter what I did or said, I'd always be under a cloud of suspicion. So you admit it? You admit you stole them from Mr. Frost's room? Yes, I do. I took those sculptures and their glass cases out of that room 18 years ago. As Mr. Edgeworth correctly deduced, I dressed up the lift cart as a serving cart to do it, and slipped in and out of Mr. Frost's room while I was going around serving tea to everybody. But in the end, I'd removed not only the sculptures, but the flavored ice Zodiac blocks as well. Zodiac blocks? I feel like I've seen them for myself somewhere. There's a huge block of ice on display here. Oh, right, this kid. So, I never talked to him last time. But, if you talk to him, he doesn't have a close-up portrait, but his name is presented as 3 question marks. And, he mentioned something about Judy Unbound giving up her career to buy this place, or whatever. And Edgeworth's like, does this kid know the proprietor somehow? Judy. Does he know Judy somehow? Must be incredibly heavy, though maybe not with it being hollow on the inside. The winter ring really was an exact replica of Miss Frost's room from 18 years ago. Then even though my father never saw them because they'd already melted, the Zodiac blocks must have been in the victim's room back then as well. When I had finished moving the 2 ice sculptures, the 2 Zodiac blocks out, I took 2 fresh empty cases to Mr. Frost's room and put them where the original 2 had been. Only the sculptures have been kept in glass cases, you see, to prevent them from being damaged. The blocks were a little more robust, so they had been displayed as is. As stated in the contest rules, we were responsible for providing all display materials, including cases, meaning it would have been easy for her to prepare those empty spares she swapped in. Mr. Frost's room contained quite a few other flavored ice works in progress. Figured if I melted them down somehow, the resulting puddle would make it look like it came down from the sculptures. And that is how the sculptures from 18 years ago came to be in the Winter Wing today. I have to say, Mr. Edgeworth, that's quite the confession. Indeed, and I think she offered it so willingly because she knows there's nothing we could do with it. That's all I have to tell you. However, despite everything you've shared, you can't charge me with anything now, can you? What? How did you figure that out? Oh my. Would have thought you might know at least this much, given we're at a crime scene. I suggest you memorize the various statutes of limitations outlined in this book. Statutes for dummies. That's a really good graphic there. Statutes of what? Statutes of Limitations book. A book containing the statutes of limitations of various crimes. Statutes for dummies. I love how, like, the first law books in the first game were like, oh, here's a bird detective. Now it's like, oh, here's law books for dummies. This one's entirely about statutes. Simply put, Kay, prosecutors only have a certain amount of time within which they can put a suspect on trial for a given crime. Theft, 7 years from the date of crime. Separate timeframes apply with regards to claims for damages, etc. Murder, 15 years from the date of the crime. Statute is suspended should the suspect flee to a foreign country. The statute is suspended from the time of any accomplice's indictment to the end of their trial. Let's take a closer look, shall we? I like that doesn't even... that was automatic. It just went off screen automatically. So it's different for every crime. Murder, 15 years. Theft, 7 years. Ah! Yes, Miss Bound stole the ice sculptures 18 years ago. So it's too late to have her arrested for that crime. I don't believe it. Theft is a serious matter, especially when it involves the removal of evidence from a crime scene. However, as you just yourself pointed out, Miss Bound, you can no longer be prosecuted for that crime. Well, however, as you yourself just pointed out, Miss Bound can no longer be prosecuted for her crime. Rendering your revelation rather pointless, wouldn't you say, Mr. Edgeworth?
Objection!
I wouldn't be so sure about that. For you see, the theft of ice sculptures isn't my principal interest here. I find the body that reappeared 18 years after the theft to be considerably more interest. Are you suggesting that it also hid Mr. Frost's body? I am indeed. But how do you keep a body hidden for 18 years without anybody finding it? By hiding it in a very unusual way. At the airport terminal. The planes are landing. Oh, now that is interesting. Are you telling me that you know where the body has been for all this time, Mr. Edgeworth? It's not such a big leap if you think about what Miss Bound has told us already. Let's just say it wasn't from just the flavored ice that she removed from Mr. Frost's body back then. Mr. Frost's room back then. Freudian slip. Very well, if you're confident in this claim, let us put it to the test. Tell me, Mr. Edgeworth, where exactly was Mr. Frost's body hidden?
Take that!
A photograph of Mr. Frost's works. And of the victim's body, Your Honor. You'll have to forgive me, but I don't see what you mean. Where exactly in this photograph of Mr. Frost's body? Victim's body is hiding right here.
Take that!
The Gemini sculpture. Yes, it may look like a sculpture at first glance, but it is in fact Mr. Frost's corpse. Because remember, Larry saw it turn into the Pisces statue when the cloth fell, but you could see its foot in that photo. What? Surely you can't be serious. I don't see anything in the photograph to support such a wild claim.
Objection!
That's because a certain piece of evidence was used to hide the body in plain sight. What piece of evidence might that be? Court demands that you present what was used to conceal the body. The cloth, obviously.
Take that!
That's floating in the fountain. One of the cloths from in the autumn wing. Yes, when it's made to glow in just the right way, it's so convincing you might mistake it for ice. Isn't that right, Miss Scone? Well, yes, dear, but you can make it look just like about anything, really. Even blazing fire. And the right shade of blue would make it look like ice, yes. Exactly like it, in fact.
Overruled!
Is it not the case that a certain special device is needed to generate these colors, though?
Objection!
If you care to take another look at the photograph of the Winter Wing, Your Honor, you'll notice that there is a small box connected to the bottom of the Gemini display case. That's one of the very light-emitting devices in question. Detective Gumshoe even confirmed its presence. In fact, this particular device went missing 18 years ago. Back then, it was no doubt firmly connected to the cloth inside the display case. Which means Miss Bound had no choice but to take it with her when she removed the sculpture. Sculpture. So you see, this cloth and the light-emitting device were being used to create the illusion that Mr. Frost's body was, in fact, a statue carved from ice. No! This can't be. Wait, so you're telling me that when we took that photo of us in the Winter Wing, yes, we were standing right in front of the body. But the body and the cloth were both recovered from the fountain. Why were they found there if the body was supposed to be in the Winter Wing disguised as a sculpture?
Objection!
Because there would have been no mystery as to how the body had been hidden if we'd found it as is. Miss Bound needed to remove Mr. Frost from the Winter Wing in order to throw us off the scent.
Overruled!
Ridiculous. I don't recall her sneaking around behind our backs to throw a body in the fountain. No, and she didn't need to, because she had another method at her disposal. Her trusty lift cart, the same cart that proved so useful in executing her original theft. I believe she wheeled the body onto one of the other wings and floated it down the stream into the fountain. The frozen body, being quite solid, probably got stuck somewhere along the way, which is why only the cloth appeared at first, the cloth which Miss Scone discovered. And then the body followed through afterwards once it had thawed enough? It's an ingenious theory, Mr. Edgeworth, but can you prove that it was me? It seems a little unfair to expect me to accept that your accusations without proof, don't you think? What about an eyewitness? Do you think someone might have spotted her when she was moving the body? As a matter of fact, I do. And the contradiction in the piece of evidence I was provided will shed light on exactly how Miss Bound moved the body as well. Well, Mr. Edgeworth, do you have any evidence to support your allegation? Of course, I have a very piece of compelling proof right here. Then please present it to the court. What evidence do you have to prove that Miss Bound acted as you claim?
Take that!
More drawings? And is that me? Yes, Mr. Butts drew sketches of people as they passed through the fountain room. But what I'm interested in is the cart we can see here. Miss Bound's serving cart, what about it? Heh, you don't see it? She's using the same trick she used 18 years ago. Ergo, we know that Miss Bound was busy moving Mr. Frost's body when this picture was being drawn. What? If I may, I don't see Mr. Frost's body anywhere in that sketch. All I see is a picture of me delivering chocolates to everyone. Really? Then allow me to direct your attention to the color of the tablecloth, Miss Bound. I'd originally thought that Mr. Butts made an error, but she assured me that that couldn't possibly be the case. This tablecloth appears to be light blue. Yes, a shade of tablecloth that Miss Bound doesn't seem to own. The cloth only appears to be light blue due to the body hiding just underneath. But the shape of the card is perfectly rectangular, just as one would expect. Surely it would have been immediately obvious if the tablecloth was being draped directly over the body.
Objection!
Not if the body had been placed inside one of the hollow zodiac blocks in the winter wing. Place one of those on the lift cart and it'd be easily pass muster as a regular serving cart, wouldn't you agree? Goddess of Justice! Miss Bound, surely now you must admit that it was you who moved the body, just as you did 18 years ago. I didn't expect you to deduce all that from a single simple sketch. But that sketch alone really isn't enough to prove your theory, is it? You needn't worry on that front. My case doesn't rest solely on Mr. Butts' artwork. Once you had disposed of the body, your serving cart became a simple lift cart once more. Which is exactly what we discovered here in the fountain room. And without a serving cart, you had to find some place to put your chocolates. My chocolates? The one I was handing out? As we saw in the sketch, you originally placed them on top of the cart. But the chocolates you gave us came from your pocket. Oh yeah, mine was half melted. It was still super sweet and tasty, though. Why'd you suddenly feel the need to put the chocolates in your pocket, Miss Bound? It was because you no longer had a serving cart to put them on, that's why. One moment, please. You've explained what Miss Bound did with the chocolates in the lift cart. But what about the tablecloth? Where did it go? Indeed, if stashing the chocolates in her pocket was the only solution she could think of, doubt Miss Bound had time to go dispose of an entire tablecloth. Well, Mr. Edgeworth, do you have an answer for me? Miss Bound didn't hide or dispose of the tablecloth, Your Honor. In fact, it's right here in front of us. Perhaps you'd care to enlighten us? Where exactly is the tablecloth that Miss Bound used to hide the body? There's no doubt in my mind that it's in the fountain. And there's no doubt in my mind that if it were, we'd already found it, Mr. Edgeworth. Oh, I thought they meant the one they recovered. I didn't say it, Milesville, but there's no doubt in my mind that you made a little boo-boo here. It seems so. You know, just thinking back to the first time I ever met Judes. Of course, I mentioned that earlier about the apron. Well, I'm an idiot. I remember wrapping a tablecloth around her waist before getting down to work. Interesting. I think that might be a vital clue. Yeah, maybe. If the defense is done talking amongst themselves, perhaps I could finally enlighten this court. Beat Ball Ultra on the hardest difficulty setting for the first time while watching this. Nice. Awesome. Miss Bound has the tablecloth on her person, and in plain view, in fact. In plain view? No, surely you don't mean... Miss Bound? It's the cloth around your waist, isn't it? And given that the Zodiac blocks weren't kept in glass cases, that cloth would have been in direct contact with the ice. All we would need to do is confirm my theory is to test the cloth for traces of the sugar used in Mr. Frost's work. The game is up, Miss Bound. It's time to come clean. You won't need to test the tablecloth. Everything you said is true. I stole Delicia's Infesticide Ultra, and I moved Mr. Frost's body. It was me. It was all me. Delicia, I'm so sorry. Last week I went into your bag and I took it. And then I put it in his pocket, hoping to make it look like he had tried to do himself in. I also made sure to leave no fingerprints but yours, just in case the police suspected foul play. Judy, you? Oh gosh. But Judes, why? Weren't we supposed to be on the same side? All fighting together to free Samson? We were, but I couldn't afford to get arrested. Not yet. Not until I'd finally proven that Samson is innocent. I always planned to give myself up in the end, I swear. I know it's easy to say that now, but why do it this way, though? It's not like you. I'm sorry, Mr. Fender. I've caused you so much trouble. I've been the guilty party all along, ever since that day 18 years ago. Are you trying to tell us that the true culprit in the IS-7 incident was you? I committed a terrible crime. I took those sculptures, and I stole them for purely selfish reasons. The moment Mr. Frost died, they became more than mere entries in the confectionery contest. They became the final works of Samson's favorite artist. I couldn't allow them to just melt away, not before he came home. And that meant I couldn't let anybody near them, not even the police. So I hid them. I knew it was wrong, but I just had to. I put them in the cold storage room for safekeeping. What I actually done was far worse than anything I could have possibly imagined. Because who would have thought that Mr. Frost's body itself was posing as one of the sculptures? So she didn't know about the body when she stole the sculptures? Samson is a kind man, a saint. He could never kill anybody, never. And yet because of what I did, the police never found Mr. Frost's body, and Samson was found guilty. After all he'd done for me, he was my family, the only family I ever had. He was the most important person in the entire world to me, and I... Judes. After his conviction, I was forced out of our home. I was finally able to return only a few days ago, and when I did, I went to the cold storage room to check up on the sculptures, and that's when I saw it. Mr. Frost's body. It had been there the whole time. Of course, by that point, the statute of limitations had long expired. So I did what I did today, because it was the only way I could think to make things right. It seems I misunderstood her intentions. Everything she's done really has all been for Mr. Tangaroa's sake. Hey, what are you thinking about, Mr. Edgeworth? Something that's been puzzling me. Why did Miss Bound use poison gas? Why not a more reliable method? And why disguise the Autumn Wing as the Winter Wing? The only reason I could think of is to confuse someone who was here 18 years ago. Yeah, I wonder what she had in mind. If she was trying to prove that Mr. Tangaroa is innocent, Miss Bound's ultimate goal must have been confess to her crime, ensure the body was found, find the true killer. Could she have been trying to discover the identity of the true culprit? Miss Bound, your ultimate aim was to see Mr. Tangaroa cleared of all charges, correct? And to that end, you had to expose the real killer and have the police find the body from 18 years ago. Is my understanding of your intentions correct? Exhibiting the sculptures was sure to have forced the killer to return to the crime scene. After all, they were the only person apart from you who knew that the body was hidden in the icework. So they would have freaked out thinking the body was about to be discovered and came running, yeah? Exactly. But Miss Bound ran the risk of the killer might successfully cover their tracks this time. In the worst-case scenario, they might even have be able to remove Mr. Frost's body from the scene. So how could she lure the true killer into revealing themselves without putting vital evidence at risk? Oh, I see what you're getting at. You're saying that that's why the Autumn Wing was all Winter Wingy. I am. You were betting on one thing, Miss Bound, weren't you? That whoever opened the Pisces case you had so carefully disguised as the Gemini case would be the real perpetrator of the IS-7 incident. No! But that would mean the real killer was...
Overruled.
Enough. Not another word. Do you realize the implications of what you're saying, Mr. Edgeworth? Are you prepared to stand behind the accusation you are clearly about to make? Miss Bound set a trap for Miss Frost's killer, meaning that whoever found themselves caught in that trap is highly likely to be the guilty party. But I lack the evidence to support such an assertion. To accuse someone without any evidence is not to be done lightly, so... Should I really go ahead and make my accusation and name Mr. Frost's killer nonetheless? Yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it, bro. My ultimate goal is to see the truth exposed. And to do that, I need to seize the moment. Haha! Yes, Gavel, I'm prepared to stand behind my accusation. I know exactly who is to blame for the IS-7 incident. Well, I mean, obviously, it's the guy who was knocked unconscious.
Take that!
Mr. Gusto, the victim of the poison gas attack, is the perpetrator behind the IS-7 incident? Gusty? Mr. Gusto, Miss Bound, as we've established, you knew that the opening of the gallery would lure in the real culprit, and you set up the poison gas trap in order to catch them. Do you dispute the facts thus far? You're a very impressive man, Mr. Edgeworth, just like your father. And of course, you're absolutely right. And perhaps you could tell us exactly what happened in your own words. Of course, I have nothing to hide anymore, so I might as well tell you everything. As you said, I set a trap here in the gallery to try to catch Mr. Frost's killer. Before we opened, I made sure that the door to the autumn wing was the only one that was unlocked. When opening time came, I went around to unlock the doors of the various rooms, and found that the autumn wing had been locked from the inside. The killer is on the other side of the door. The thought, well, it frightened me. And then she simply walked away, leaving to fall victim to her poison gas trap. When I heard that Mr. Gusto was being treated for gas inhalation, that's when I knew he was the murderer. All that was left was for the police to find Mr. Frost's body, and then Samson would finally be proven innocent. At least, that was my plan. Judes, why didn't you tell me? You know I'm always here for you, right? We could have found another way. It didn't have to be like this. Thank you, Mr. Fender. You've been so very kind to me all these years. But I'm the one who created this mess, so it was up to me to try and clean it up. I didn't care what it took, as long as I could get Samson out of that awful place. Judy. 18 years ago, the police managed to cover up the fact that Mr. Frost's body had gone missing. If I went to them now and said it had reappeared, I was afraid they might have tried to cover things up again. So I worked to set off a very public incident here in the gallery, in front of as many witnesses as possible. I'm so sorry, Judy. You, Samson, Gregory, I let you all down. Fender, this can't be easy for him. No, I'm the one who should be apologizing. Mr. Edgeworth, Mr. Fender, I hope one day you can forgive me. And whatever punishment I have to face, I'm ready to accept it. But please, if I may ask one thing of you, it's that you simply must clear Samson's name. The way the truth of these past 18 years had come to light was unexpected, to say the least. And yet, it only set us down a path towards an even more shocking end. Ba-dum-bum, bum-bum, ba-dum-bum. Alright. Break, and then we'll restart.